Welcome back. I am Serena, and if you already know me, then you know I speak about media, politics, and much more. So, in this live stream, I thought I would explain where I've been, and we could also discuss a little bit about the Green Party and the success that Zach Polanski is experiencing, and a little bit about the news. So for now, while I just set up this live, just want to welcome you back. Thank you for being patient. You may have already, let me just check if the live's up 1 second. Yeah, you may have already come across my new podcast called Systems and Questions, and we're 3 episodes in. And you can find it primarily here on YouTube and then all podcast platforms. So do check it out. The aim of the podcast is to look at issues across the socio political arena and to look at the systems in play and pose questions and hopefully engage ourselves in some reflection rather than needing an immediate action or reaction. You might tune in to my latest piece, which is called A Shot of Wi-Fi. And in it, I talk about that sort of reactive element that media platforms, tech giants, etc., want from us, that sort of reactivity. So I'm hoping that my content over here does the opposite. So let's discuss a little bit about where I've been and what you can expect to find here on the channel. So I've been a little bit on pause because primarily I would say needing some time to reflect and then tech issues. And I've had many tech issues, and I'm I'm somebody who I wouldn't say I'm superstitious, but I would pay attention to this kind of thing happening, probably in a little bit more detail than most would, in the sense that I would give it a little bit more significance and I would be concerned and I'd wonder, hang on a second. Thank you, Hussain, in the comments. Um, I thought, oh, my MacBook Pro is damaged and now I'm using my backup, which is very slow. Oh, maybe I shouldn't be streaming anymore. Or my monitor's broken, or this other thing's happened. And multiple things were happening all at once. At the same time, I felt the need for greater reflection. And then I wanted to make my contribution via my content much more meaningful, hence the launch of the new podcast, Systems and Questions. I wanted to take some time in the week and the weeks where I would have some time to research and write a piece for my Substack and then record it for here. So I guess those sudden, surprising things taking place, like technology failing, etc., gave me the opportunity to reflect and think a little bit about what more I would like to produce and what feels like it's more meaningful and valuable for the audience. But then, sometimes, unfortunately, um, put it down to my neurodiversity, put it down to my personality, which is all combined. I thought, oh, you know what? I think I just have to start all over again. And I think the mistake there was that I, I perhaps thought starting over again meant stopping what I was doing. And really, you can start over and choose a a new style or new medium or a new format. And kind of played with multiple formats over here before, but then I realized, it's not that. It's not that. What has felt stale is the political arena and the material that we have to consider. And that, of course, has a big impact on the content creator, the commentator, the journalist. And so I thought, oh, I've mentioned the J word now. I thought, oh, as a commentator, reacting to all of this stuff feels quite empty, reactive, and useless sometimes. I don't know where the utility is. I don't know where the value is for me, the commentator, and therefore also the listener, and thereby the listener. Um, and so the J word, journalist. I thought, gosh, writing has always been a part of my process. I have been a journalist before. I've maintained for a very long time on here, on my other platforms and channels and accounts that I'm not a journalist. I am a commentator, and let's have conversations in the comment section. But as I continue to write pieces for my Substack, as I continue to write generally, I kind of got that buzz and that interest and that curiosity again. And I remembered being a journalist for features. I remembered being a journalist for sort of lifestyle and political pieces, and being able to kind of join dots and present new ways of looking at things and posing questions to the reader. And that really excites me. That's actually quite interesting. We're not here to, you know, to not be a creator or a journalist who's just telling people what to believe is pretty good in my book. It's actually very valuable where you are broadcasting and you're speaking to your listeners or you're writing for your readers. And you're able to just pose questions and have a back and forth and just repeat that sort of reflection session almost. And I think that's the beauty of streaming and doing it live, where you can have that reflection session with your peeps. And then there's the bit where you get to deeper dive and write, research, and that's where you will find the podcast systems and questions. So I thought, I don't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater. We can have both. We can have both. So these streams and these videos, you'll find some conversation, some reflection, and maybe a little bit of a response to what's going on. And then we will have pieces that have been written and produced where I've been able to sort of tune out and unplug from all of this mess. So thank you for those 5 or so minutes listening to where I've been. So that's where I've been. But I'm here. I'm still here. It's wonderful to get the new subs as well. And thank you for continuing to support my channel. So the Green Party's new leader, I say new leader, um, the Green Party's feels like I mean, now when I think of the Green Party, I only think of Zach Polanski, and I think that is the success of the communications, and it's the success of the campaign apparatus, those who are um, doing the planning around this. I want to just lower my seat a little bit; it might make a sound. Ooh, it's quite nice and silent. I just wanted to prop my elbow up on the table. So I think it's a success, most definitely, for the campaign team, for the Green Party's higher ups, right? Because there is, such a movement now. There is a real, I would say, almost like a. I don't want to use the word revolution, but it's kind of giving a sense of build building and an acceleration of it. And I think what has helped so much is the fact that Zach Polanski has been very confident, direct, and articulate in all of the key messages, the campaign items for the Green Party, and has done this in such an eloquent way when being challenged in interviews or in random exchanges, or when he is speaking himself on his own on his own channels. Um, but more than that, I think it's the impression that Zach Polanski is leaving with the sort of media literati types, and also with other politicians who are probably unwittingly, sort of unknowingly acknowledging how well he's doing and how good he is at this role. Um, and I think it's got them all shook, as we say. And now, sort of observing the sort of changing landscape, the changing sentiment, it is quite the opposite of stale. When I was saying earlier how a lot of the politics that we react to, that I have spoken about in the past, has just sort of started to feel very stale and stuck. And now we've got the incoming Your Party. We have Zach Polanski leading the Green Party. There were some real shifts and changes, and so it's making it a much more exciting and interesting time to be working within the sort of media politics area. So I am tuned in, and I will sort of come back and discuss this a little bit more with you, but I am paying attention. I'm tuning in, and I am spotting patterns. I am taking notes, and there'll be more to come. I recently tuned in to the interview that Nigel Farage gave to Michelle Hussain on Bloomberg. And aside from the, hey, love, what was it? He called her love, which she didn't react to. I mean, there was a bit of a shift in her body language, but she didn't react to. The comment section was very interesting. But I recently tuned into that, and it was actually quite a generous 40, 50 minutes. Perhaps it was under an hour, something like that. In contrast to a lot of the comments that were arguing that the journalist Michelle Hussain wasn't allowing Nigel Farage to speak, I'll actually say that I thought that that was a pretty decent interview for Nigel Farage. Of course, he was challenged. The broadcast journalist's job when conducting an interview like that has to challenge. It's not one of those very beige vanilla entertainment news slots where the interviewer wants to hear about your feelings and your excitement. This is politics. And if you're going to be interviewed, then it should be rigorous. I mean, that's the whole point. But I think where Nigel Farage felt challenged, he pushed back quite, I suppose, well, and managed to get his points across. So there were many frustrated comments. Presumably they were all, I mean, it was obvious that they were all Reform supporters and Nigel Farage fans. And they seemed to be saying that he wasn't getting a fair interview. And I thought that was really bizarre. And I thought, it got me thinking about what are our sort of expectations of journalists and these kinds of interviews, absolutely, there are some interviews that you tune into and you're thinking, gosh, this journalist, this commentator, whoever they are, hey, Adam, good evening to you too. They are absolutely obsessed with getting a gotcha like moment. They want a gotcha moment. And that gets actually quite tiring because you want to hear them out. I don't think Michelle Hussain was doing that in this Bloomberg interview for with Nigel Farage. I mean, of course you could sense what her bias is or what her perspective may be, um, and how she feels about somebody like Nigel Farage. Um, but I don't think that necessarily got in the way of Nigel getting a good interview. I thought I thought he was okay. Thank you for the recommendation, Adam. So I'll check that out. So I thought that it was a decent opportunity, a decent media opportunity for somebody like Nigel Farage, and I thought that it would be sort of equally informative and entertaining for both sides. So I thought actually it was a job well done. The fact that Michelle Hussein did not react to being called love twice is a testament to her professionalism, her experience in the game, and her character, her sort of her mannerisms. She doesn't seem like the type who would sort of entertain sort of unpleasant back and forth with somebody on the airwaves or on camera. I don't think she would find that sort of useful for her or the listener, the viewer. But I'd have to sort of dive into Michelle Hussein archives to find evidence of her doing that. But I don't think that's necessary, and it doesn't um, have any use for the point that I'm making. And that is that from what I saw of this interview with Michelle Hussein, Nigel Farage got a pretty good media opportunity. I thought that he managed to speak on a lot of things that he is challenged on from those on the other aisle, on the other side of the aisle, in politics, his thoughts on Trump, Putin, and it was just a revealing interview. And I think for those who have reservations about Nigel Farage, they will have them confirmed. And those who adore Nigel Farage for all that he is, they will have that confirmed. So we're kind of in this sort of odd space now where I don't think these media opportunities are really going to be doing any gotchas with somebody like Nigel Farage, unless you're able to really find something completely new, that no one else has been able to uncover or discover. Because the kind of personality that Nigel Farage is, he's already putting it all out there. You know, he didn't have to repeat love twice when speaking to Michelle Hussein, but he did it, and he knew that it would be clipped, and it has been used more than once. I don't think it's going to be impacting his base, his support in a sort of a negative way. If anything, it might sort of embolden them even more. It probably entertained them. They probably really enjoyed it. And so somebody like Farage, who has done the sort of Trump playbook of doing this sort of so-called authentic thing, which I would sort of push back on. I don't believe these characters, these leaders, these politicians are doing the authentic thing. I think what they're doing is they're identifying the problematic things that people think and feel, and then they're saying that sort of part out loud. And it's seen as, oh, they're being honest, they're being bold, they're being confident, they're saying what we're all thinking. But, we shouldn't always say what we're thinking, should we? That's the whole point of having a filter. And so if you have some thoughts, ideas, beliefs about those around you or those in society that could cause harm, that's what your filter in your brain, your mind is for, to figure out whether or not that idea, that thought, that belief should get any kind of air, um, any space for expression. But when populist sort of leaders and politicians do their sentiment tracking and mapping, and they find out what the pain points are and what the sort of thoughts and ideas are of disgruntled, disenchanted communities and sections of society who, if if captured, could shift the balance electorally, they'll figure out how to use those pain points, use that disenchantment, and articulate those thoughts and ideas that people have that shouldn't necessarily express, and use it for political gain. And so when people say, oh, he's saying what we're all thinking, are your thoughts, should your thoughts be expressed? I mean, we come back to this idea of like, should, this challenge, should every thought you have be expressed? This idea of freedom, complete freedom of, should I now, at this time in the evening, it's nearly 7 p.m. Should I, throw open my window and start yelling in the street random things about Halloween in a non-PG way because I want to, because that's freedom? It's bizarre. It is bizarre. Thank you again for the comments and for the recommendations. Thanks, Adam. So it's we're in a strange place because this sort of expression, Adam says yes, do yell, start yelling out the window. Um, um, this sort of expression of every idea, even if it causes harm, is now amplified not just by our devices but by AI. Hello, Templar. Thank you so much for joining. It's now just amplified by so many factors now that we have to contend with, and so that in itself makes it a very non-stale and non sort of static environment. So that's okay. Adam says, I think people need a good shaking up. Please yell. I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. So I think this sort of feeling so mad and feeling so fed up and so frustrated with the political class, with policy makers, with the status quo is something, it's not new, but I think it is amplified and reflected back to us now because of our devices, because of AI. And so it's almost like you are always getting the sort of reinforcement and acknowledgement for all of your frustrations. And I don't know if that's a healthy thing for us. And many activists would say, well, Serena, that's how we mobilize. But are we mobilizing for the good or mobilizing because we feel some of our problems, some of our frustrations are more important than anything else that the sort of whole is experiencing or feeling? It's a really worthwhile, I think, discussion for us to have with those in our circle, those um, around the sort of dinner table or in the comment section. I think I'd be really keen to get your thoughts on that one, to really get your sort of ideas and your opinions on that one. Because I kind of fear that now, because of the way that modern society is set up, because of technology, because of our constant scrolling, we are very isolated in our woes. And it's so easy for us to lose perspective. How do we, which is really odd because, if we're saying that these devices are generating these echo chambers where we are only aware and cognizant of our sort of woes, our own woes, these devices should actually be connecting us to the whole. But they've kind of done the opposite. Maybe there was a period of time where it did that. It's like a massive library of information and exposure to this whole big world. But now what it seems to be doing is it seems to be trapping you back into that sort of hole of, you know, having no access to real information. Thanks for the comments. So I think that we have to sort of be really, I think, engaged with one another so that we can be prepared for how much our frustrations, our sort of thoughts, our pain is being magnified, but also then used, utilized. I would always recommend a zoom out. I will always recommend taking a step all the way back. And by doing so, you're able to not just get distance from that sort of immediate, overwhelming, consuming thought, but I think you just begin to notice other things. It's not just about taking in the big picture, because sometimes when we say, zoom out, take the big picture, we're still thinking about it in relation to that sort of problem or struggle or issue that we are completely occupied with. Actually, there are so many other things, so many other details, so many other connections, interconnections that we are missing when we don't zoom out. You just begin to notice other things. And indeed, you might even notice other problems. And that should be okay, because sometimes this one thing could just have you completely sucked in and trapped. And then you're just on this sort of hamster wheel with yourself. And that's the sort of unfortunate thing with activism online. It's sort of got everyone into this sort of trap. So what are your thoughts? There's a question from Adam. What do you, Serena, what do you think our greatest threats are in our world? Because I'm not sure what your viewpoint is, even though I have an inkling. Thanks for that question. Um, I think the greatest threat, and it's something that I wrote in my latest Substack piece and in the episode for Systems and Questions, which is called A Shot of Wi-Fi. I think we have allowed our thinking, our ability to think, to be degraded so much we haven't realized. We haven't prepared for this, and we're not prepared for it. Unless you are occupied with allowing yourself to engage with material that really challenges you, and not just intellectually, not just in terms of your ability, but cognitively, actually, unless you have material that you are engaging with that is really challenging your mind, that you're finding difficult, and you're having to spend a little bit of time to reread, to figure out, I think we're on a hurtling, speedy freight train of cognitive rot. And I think it's already started, it's already happened. And I think the unfortunate thing is that many of us who've been tuning into long form content for, gosh, 5+ years especially, have gotten so much data, but I don't know how much value we absorbed. I don't know how much we've absorbed in terms of the kind of knowledge, the kind of information that you would find in, for instance, academic texts that would challenge you to do some thinking yourself. The problem with a lot of the long form content and podcasts is that most of it is a summary of someone's own thoughts and their own opinions. And we are essentially finding agreement, but we're not finding challenge in a comfortable way. And I think that's what academia does. I think that's what happens when you're training to do something new. It challenges you in a comfortable way. And without that challenge, that's where the rot sets in. So, coming back to your question, you asked, Serena, what is the greatest threat in our world? I think it's been this for a while. We're allowing ourselves to rot. And the spaces where we think we are improving, increasing our literacy, I think may be having the opposite effect. It's just an echo chamber or sort of a reinforcing loop, but in a sort of a longer form way. You've got your short reinforcing loops of like short form content and then your long form content. So my fear is that because we're consuming so much, that we are missing the fact that like we've spent 2-3 hours a day even with long form content, and it's just not given us the kind of challenge or provided us with tools to really elevate our thinking and to really build on our abilities. I think a lot of it makes us comfortable and keeps us entertained. So, and because we're now in the attention economy, the information economy, it will just keep building and building and building and building. And that's why it's a concern and a fear for me, because I think we're already there. I'll come to the comments. So thank you. You've been in conversation with one another about telescopes and NASA, um, and other such matters. But yeah, I do feel that we find comfort in sort of interviews, in conversations, in podcasts that help to sort of, of course, there is some utility to it. Of course, there is some value to it, but it shouldn't be the only thing. It shouldn't be the only resource. And I think it's become the primary resource for a lot of people, for a lot of us. And I think it just wouldn't harm us for every hour we spend of, you know, listening to long form content, which is usually a podcast or something, that we spend sort of 25 minutes reading in the park. Although it is a bit chilly now. Let's talk about the weather um, as I wind down this live stream, catching up with you, letting you know where I've been. I talked about my thoughts on the Green Party and Zach Polanski at the very start. We'll talk about it some more. I discussed the Nigel Farage interview with Michelle Hussain on Bloomberg. And Adam says in the comments, I'm one of those conspiracy theorists people on the news tell you to hate. And, I was having a bit of an odd conversation with somebody at work, and I said, "Oh, I've got my tinfoil hat on." I said it in a jokey way, but, I was very serious about it because really all I was doing was pointing out the things that you wouldn't normally hear on legacy news. And that doesn't make me a conspiracy theorist. It's just me saying perhaps this, maybe this. So I hear you, Adam. Thank you. Listen, thank you so much. I've gone over time a little bit because I was only meaning to do a quick catch up with you, so it's just gone over 30 minutes. Um, so it's wonderful to have you back in the comment section. That is great. Thank you so much. And do tune in to the Systems and Questions podcast. I'm on episode 3. So please let me know your thoughts and tune in. The audio is provided here on my YouTube channel, and you can also find it on all podcast platforms. And as I said right at the top of this podcast, I will return for regular reflection and consideration of what's going on in media and politics. And then I'll be doing some more sort of, I would say, not deep dives, but provide you with pieces through my podcast Systems and Questions on issues or on themes or events that I've had the time to think about and write about and research, and then put on wax, as they say. So I really appreciate your support for this channel, and I would love it if you haven't already subscribed. Of course, you can still find me on Patreon. I'm there. My Substack, it's a new space. I write my pieces and publish them there. I supply the audio over here for the podcast, so you can check that out. And let me know in the comments section your thoughts on all the things I covered in this live stream. Any thoughts and ideas on content creation? Perhaps you're a content creator. What's your journey with it? You might want to check out my strategic thinking channel called Serena's Playbook, largely for content creators and those who are building brands online. What are your thoughts on Zach Polanski leading the Green Party to new heights? Your party, what are your thoughts on your party, and also that Nigel Farage interview with Michelle Hussain on Bloomberg? Hello, as I say goodbye. Hello, Story. Hello, Adam, Templar, Hashim, and many more of you. So thank you so much. And once I get this tech sorted out, I mean, I'm just glad I've had a separate couple of channels open, my channel open, but different tabs open just to check the feed to ensure that it's been okay and it's not bad. So good old MacBook Pro. Mac Templar says, make cat videos and you'll get millions of views. I don't have a cat. People keep telling me to, but I don't have one. So my good old MacBook Pro from gosh knows what year has managed to do the trick. But let me know if you have any recommendations on, I would call it Asus or Asus. I think it's called Artbook. Let me know if you have any recommendations, because I'm looking for something that sort of is not an Apple product. I have many reasons for that. So if you have any thoughts on that, so just let me know, because I am honestly not going to fix the screen of a MacBook Pro that just has an absolutely obscene price tag. I mean, I just refuse. So let me know your recommendations on I think it's Asus Artbook. I think that's what it's called. Apparently it's great for video editing, which is what I need, as well as streaming. And let's hope my tech holds up until I get a replacement. But for now, you've been superb. appreciate your support. Do all those wonderful things. Like, share, subscribe. And I'll see you in the next one very soon. Have an awesome night, morning, afternoon, depending on when you're listening to this. Take care.